This is lesson 47, and this will be the final lesson of the music literacy course. While I won't be making any new videos, I have made lots of practice videos, and you can always go back and review any of the past instructional videos I've made. I'd encourage you, if you've established a regular habit of practicing, a near daily habit ideally, 6 days per week, aim low for duration, high for frequency, I'd encourage you to continue that. It's easier to maintain it than it is to restart it. So continue to review this material until it's fairly easy for you, it's all very familiar, you feel comfortable with it, and then consider using some of the other resources I'm going to share with you. In addition, you can use your practice time to practice any of the skills we've worked on with your own music that you're working on for church or for something you're doing in your community or just for your personal enjoyment. I can't give super specific information beyond basic reading and theory curricula because I don't know what everybody's individual needs are, what their background is, what their goals are, what instruments they play. But I can say that generally, for a lot of people, it's really helpful to work with a one-on-one instructor, even if it's just for seasons in your life, just to kind of get a new direction, and then you can run with that for a while, especially as an adult. We're often pretty self-motivated, and if we're interested in a subject, it's sometimes just enough to get some knowledge from someone when you feel like you hit a roadblock in your learning or in the progress you're wanting to make, and just study with an instructor for some amount of time until you feel like you've been given enough information to run with it for a while. On to some specific recommendations of materials you might want to consider if you want to continue learning more about the language of music. So first of all, we've been using the book Ready to Read Music, and I'd recommend, if you haven't purchased it yet, it's a great resource just to look back on. Almost everything in here is really correct. There were a few things in the very last parts of the book that I corrected in the videos just a little bit, where I think he oversimplifies a little bit, and maybe leads people astray a tiny bit, but nothing serious at all. Certainly when it comes to the actual rhythm and note reading, which is the most fundamental and important things in my book, he nails it. So I would very much recommend using this as a reference just to look back at. The more you practice, the more you look at music, the more sometimes a question will pop into your mind. And even if we had covered it, you might not have retained it at the time. And just having this at your fingertips to flip through quickly can be really helpful. And of course, I'll also mention I spent a lot of time in this course working through Rhythm Workshop by Sally K. Albrecht. And if you haven't purchased it, I definitely recommend that as well. There are many exercises in here I wasn't able to get through, but this is a very, very useful book. In my opinion, rhythm and beat is the most fundamental thing in pretty much any type of music making. And it really is what allows us to play with other people. If you look back through this course, you'll see that I spent a very disproportionately long time on beat and rhythm compared to pitch. Well, both are absolutely fundamental, just being able to read, understand, and realize a piece of sheet music. Rhythm is infinitely harder for most people to read and understand and get their bodies to realize. The comprehension of pitch and the basic execution of it or performance of it is not that complex and not that difficult compared to rhythm. Of course, it's a lot harder for certain instruments, for example, string players with no frets. That would be me as a violinist. It just takes us a really long time to understand, let's say, how to play precisely in tune. But that's really a different concept than pitch reading and understanding that that's an A and this is how we play it. So the point in all of that is that this book is worth your time and energy. If you can master all of the rhythms in this book and be able to perform them with ease and efficiency with a steady pulse at multiple metronome settings, that could take you years of work, and it is worth that time if you want to be able to really feel secure in how you're able to play with others. So in my opinion, this rhythm workshop is by far the best beginner and even intermediate rhythm reading text that I've come across. The primary reason for that is that Sally has given you many, many examples to practice at about the same level in the same situation. So for example, she has always an entire page of 4/4 time with quarter notes and quarter rests, 4/4 time with half notes and half rests, and only adding in pretty much one difficulty with each lesson, and then lots of examples, just different permutations of the same difficulty. I think this is really excellent and really helpful when we're learning rhythm. You'll see a whole lot of other rhythm texts out there to just practice rhythm, and most of them, I believe, move too quickly and they don't really give you enough examples of at the same sort of level. So you really get a depth of understanding and a lot of different ways of practicing the same skill. When it comes to pitch reading, I would generally just recommend that you use the music that you want to be learning or that you are already learning for church or for your community or for your own personal enjoyment to continue to practice the skill of identifying the pitches by letter name and then being able to realize them on your instrument. You can also look on Amazon for simple books of beginner pieces for your instrument or for voice if you want to go that route and just want extra music to practice. One example of that is actually this book by Jay Althouse, Ready to Sing Spirituals. So they're pretty simple songs for voice and piano accompaniment. And you could just go through, use the same method, if helpful, that we used in the last lesson of saying the pitches using letter names and then finding them on the piano and then singing the letter names at the same time, then singing them with rhythm, then singing them with the words. Just go through that progression if it's helpful to you. I've mentioned this in past videos, but another helpful tool could be some music flashcards. These ones cover both the basic pitches in the bass and treble clef, as well as many of the symbols and signs we've discussed in this course, like treble clef and sharp and flat and things like that, mezzo forte, mezzo piano, crescendo. So you can just use these to drill. You can even do something like, I'm going to do 10 cards a day, and just chip away at it week after week, month after month, and eventually you'll be really fluent in these things. So if that helps, you can consider that. This is one that's actually instrument specific. And so on the back, this is for violin. On the back, it would even show where it is on your string. So you can get all sorts of different flashcards. Just look on Amazon. This is a really basic one that pops up probably right away when you look for music flashcards. And it's something like, don't quote me, but something like $6 to $8, certainly under 20. You should be able to get a set of music flashcards. Even though this isn't specific to music reading per se, I would highly encourage you to practice scales, arpeggios, and perhaps other technical exercises on your instrument or with your voice every day. Ideally, sing or play those scales while singing your letter names, and you're really going to help not only your music reading, but also just your general technical facility on your instrument. If you think about it, all music is essentially made up of little bits of scales and little bits of arpeggios. So if you have a mastery over the range of scales and arpeggios on your instrument or within your vocal range, you'll have a huge head start on learning any of the repertoire you want to tackle. If you want to learn more about what are scales and arpeggios, how should I practice them, why should I practice them, you can find a lot of different resources just by searching on YouTube for different videos geared towards beginners that are specific to your instrument or your needs. And likewise, Amazon would have a lot of different books that you can just use as a starting point. There's another really good Learn to Read Music book that I can recommend highly called How to Read Music in 30 Days. It's by someone called Matthew Ellul. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Ellul. And this is really, really well done. I actually considered, instead of making these videos, just directing people to this course because I think it's really well done. And again, the information is correct. I don't like courses that teach you incorrect information in an effort to fast track learning. He's efficient in his method, but he teaches the right stuff, which is great, and gives a great foundation. Actually, the progression is very similar to Jay Albrecht's in many ways. He goes a little more in depth in some things, but I thought it was a little bit intimidating, a little bit bigger chunks, I would say. He takes a little bit bigger bites. There are online resources to also supplement this, and I believe they're free when you buy the book. The book is available on Amazon. So I'd recommend it, even if you just want to work through it again, to cover everything we just covered in this course and just get a little bit different take, get another run through all of the material, get some of it a tiny bit more in depth, and just be able to work through all of it again to allow it to sink in deeper. I personally went through, the entire progression of learning theory 3 different times in my education. I did it as a middle and high schooler, then I did it again in my undergrad, and I did it again in my grad school work. And each time I got something different from it because it was always from a different viewpoint, using a different curriculum and with different teachers. So I found it really helpful in deepening my understanding and making sure I had a lot of both depth and breadth in my learning. From the very beginning, I made clear that this is a music literacy course, not a music theory course. I hopefully gave you the fundamentals you need to be able to read music and to understand what you're seeing on the page so that you can realize it on your instrument or in your voice. But if you really want to understand what makes music tick and you want a little bit of help even in learning to improvise or as a guitar or bass player, understanding how chords work, you're going to want some theory background. Music theory is basically the grammar and spelling of the musical language. So the one theory curriculum out there that I can strongly recommend to you is called Celebrate Theory. It's put out by the Royal Conservatory of Music. There are 9 books from the prep level, which I would definitely recommend starting with. So you'd do prep, and then you would start in after that on level 1, 2, 3, up through 8. There are more advanced books beyond that, but up through 8 would be incredible. You would have a great foundation of music theory. And even if you just did the first 2 or 3 books, you would have a huge leg up from where you are likely starting right now. Some of the things I love about this curriculum is that it actually has answer keys for all of the books. You purchase them separately, but you can actually purchase, there's one answer key for the books prep through, I think, level 4, and then there's another answer key for books 5 through 8. So you can essentially completely teach yourself music theory. Also, it's written for kids. And while I know that sounds negative, it's not overly cutesy or anything like that, but it's written for kids in the sense that it's broken down very step by step. The explanations are crystal clear. The scope and sequence is very well thought out, so it's very systematic, no jumping around and no shortcuts. Likewise, it applies to any instrument, but I really like that they use the keyboard as a foundation of theoretical understanding. Well, this curriculum has been reworked since I used it, in the sense of it's now 9 little books, and I had like 3 ginormous ones. It's essentially the same material that I actually grew up using in my theory work from the ages of about 8 till 18. And it prepared me incredibly well for any of my college and grad school work. That said, I did go through all the upper levels as well. But even if you go through this specific prep through grade 8 series, you would likely have all the theory knowledge you could ever want, unless you are planning on becoming a music major. And that's all. So I wish you the absolute best with your musical endeavors. I congratulate you on getting this far, and I hope you continue to enjoy learning more about the language of music.